9 years ago, I was 23 years old, and me, my wife, and 4 other friends of ours, we went on a trip and we sailed for 3 weeks, lived on a sailboat in the Virgin Islands. And it's an experience I don't think about that much, but reading Moby Dick brings that experience back to me in a really intense way. At that time in 2011, there was Facebook and there was YouTube, but it was extremely different, unrecognizably different from the way Facebook and social media seems to operate in my life today. But even then, I saw myself as someone who was always working, always on the computer, somewhat of a workaholic, and I saw this trip, this 3 weeks, as an opportunity to detox, to turn off all electronic devices for 3 weeks and see what happens. Just sit in the space of the open ocean, the vastness of the water, and this new, beautiful, tropical landscape, and just be with myself. And so on this trip, the only electronic device that I had was my flip phone, which didn't have any service, and an e-reader, one of these old first generation e-readers where I piled on all of Project Gutenberg. So basically a whole bunch of ebooks. And I had my algorithms textbook, which I studied, MIT's big canonical algorithms textbook. And I didn't even have music with me, which now sounds so crazy, so bizarre. I didn't even have music. It was just the silence of that space. Reading Moby Dick takes me back to that. It takes me back to that one time, those 3 weeks in my life where, despite being surrounded by 5 other people, I never felt more alone. And I was never more alone with my thoughts. When I was on that boat and I wasn't reading, I remember just falling into this state, this meditative state where you stare out at the expanse, at the void all around you of the water as you're sailing and bobbing, and you lose yourself. You lose your sense of identity. You lose your sense of time. In chapter 35 of Moby Dick, called The Masthead, Ishmael describes the job of sitting up on this masthead on the, it's like the crow's nest basically, where you have to look for whales and call out if you see a whale. And Ishmael says that he wasn't very good at that job because he would get lost in his thoughts, looking out at the open ocean. Quote, "Very often do the captains of such ships take those absent-minded young philosophers to task, upbraiding them with not feeling sufficient interest in the voyage, half hinting that they are so hopelessly lost to all honorable ambition, as that in their secret souls they would rather not see whales than otherwise." Skipping a bit. Quote, "Why, thou monkey," said a harpooner to one of these lads, "we've been cruising now hard upon 3 years, and thou hast not raised a whale yet. Whales are as scarce as hen's teeth whenever thou art up here." Ishmael continues, "Perhaps they were, or perhaps there might have been shoals of them in the far horizon. But lulled into such an opium-like listlessness of vacant, unconscious reverie is this absent-minded youth by the blending cadence of waves with thoughts that at last he loses his identity, takes the mystic ocean at his feet for the visible image of that deep, blue, bottomless soul pervading mankind and nature, and every strange, half-seen, gliding, beautiful thing that eludes him, every dimly discovered, uprising fin of some undiscernible form seems to him the embodiment of those elusive thoughts that only people the soul by continually flitting through it. In this enchanted mood, thy spirit ebbs away to whence it came, becomes diffused through time and space." End quote. A major image in the book Moby Dick is the image of the try works. When we get later in the book, there's a chapter 96, called The Tryworks, which describes these two massive pots, these like black cauldrons that are used for refining the spermaceti, which is extracted from the whale to sort of make the oil, which is so valuable, that they're going to bring to port to sell. And it involves this process of like this continuous flame that makes the ship this fiery, smoky, kind of hellish environment in many ways. At one point, Ishmael says that it was like the embodiment of the captain's monomaniacal soul. And in this chapter, The Tryworks, he describes this transformation before these pots are in use to when they're finally put in use. And describing the pots before they're being used to burn the animal materials, he says that they're very clean and that they're a great place for solitary meditation. So talking about these pots, quote, "It is a place also for profound mathematical meditation. It was in the left-hand tripot of the Pequod, with the soapstone diligently circling round me, that I was first indirectly struck by the remarkable fact that in geometry, all bodies gliding along the cycloid, my soapstone, for example, will descend from any point in precisely the same time." End quote. And this line is so funny to me. It's like a joke. It raises these questions because we don't know anything about who Ishmael is. Who is Ishmael that he's meditating about a cycloid inside the Tryworks, and that he has this flash of insight that on the cycloid, any falling object will take the same amount of time. If you have a cycloid is a kind of curve. It's a curve that's formed by placing a point on a wheel and then rolling the wheel and tracing out the line that that point makes on the 2D plane. And it's a kind of curve. And it has this property that if you like have a point A up here and a point B over here and you make a cycloid between them, anywhere you drop a point, it's going to take the same amount of time to get from where you drop to the end, to point B. And this is very closely related to a famous brachistostone problem, which is like this relatively ancient problem in mathematics, which says if you drop an object from point A and it's going to slide along a track to get to a point which is lower than it on point B, what track will have the fastest time to get from point A to point B? And sort of the initial intuitive answer that most people would come up with first is like a straight line, because that would be the shortest path for the object to roll down, for the object to slide down. But that's not the fastest, because when the object slides down that straight line, it starts off slow and it builds up speed, and eventually when it finishes, it's going as fast as it was, much faster than when it started its journey. But you can actually do better than a straight line, because if you like do a steep descent in the beginning, the object will pick up a lot of speed and then will finish the route much faster. So even though it's a longer trajectory, a longer path, it will have a faster rate of descent. And so the cycloid is the answer to that problem. That equilibrium solution where any single point that you drop from will take the same amount of time to get to the end is the optimal solution. And so we imagine Ishmael in these mathematical reflections who gets like this stroke of insight, this stroke of understanding. And that's another thing which I can really relate to. I had my e-reader with me on the boat, and I had my algorithms textbook with me. And when you're in this place of silence, of real profound emptiness, mental emptiness, there's a capacity, I think, to think deeply. And I remember that, and I don't want to go into details because it'd be boring to any of you, but I'll just say I remember personally having deep insights like that, deep mathematical insights. Some I remember, some I don't remember, but I remember it being unlike anything I've ever experienced. When I think back on that experience and those memories, I ask myself, is that something I can return to? Is there a part of me that remains a kind of island that has that inner peace that I can tap into? And the honest answer is, I don't know. I'm not so sure. I try. But I think that's a question that Ishmael ponders. And the way he describes and thinks about that question is that there's so much danger in what he's doing. The ocean is filled with animals that are cannibalizing each other under the water. The water represents peril, but there's this internal peace, this core of tranquility that Ishmael can tap into. In chapter 58, so around the middle of the book, Ishmael says, quote, "Consider the subtleness of the sea, how its most dreaded creatures glide underwater, unapparent for the most part, and treacherously hidden beneath the loveliest tints of azure." Skipping a bit. "Consider all this, and then turn to this green, gentle, and most docile earth. Consider them both, the sea and the land, and do you not find the strange analogy to something in yourself? For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man there lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all the horrors of the half-known life. God keep thee. Push not off from that isle. Thou canst never return." Anyway, so those are just some of the ways that Moby Dick evokes that episode from my life and raises questions for me about solitude, about quietude, about the noise of modernity, the noise of social media, the way I'm always checking my phone. That's it. Thanks for watching.